Imagine placing your most precious possession, your defenseless infant, into the arms of another. A person you believed you could trust. A caregiver. Someone you hired to protect them, to nurture them, to keep them safe. What if that trust was shattered in the most brutal way imaginable? What if the very person you entrusted with your child's life became their executioner? For every parent, the need for childcare is a reality. Work, appointments, life's demands, they often necessitate leaving your children in someone else's care. We search for responsible individuals, hoping to find someone kind, capable, and above all, trustworthy. In Wausau, Wisconsin, in the autumn of 2018, a young mother found herself in this very situation. She needed someone to watch her two young sons. And she found Marissa Tietsort. Marissa Tietsort. To those who knew her casually, she might have seemed unremarkable. A 28-year-old woman, a mother herself, offering babysitting services. Perhaps she presented herself as warm, capable, and reliable. The kind of person you might feel comfortable leaving your children with. But beneath that surface, behind the facade of an ordinary caregiver, lay a darkness that no one could have foreseen. A darkness that would culminate in an act of unspeakable violence, forever destroying the lives of a family, and leaving a community reeling in disbelief. This is the story of a mother's shattered trust. This is the story of an innocent life brutally stolen. This is the story of Marissa Tietsort. And the 2-month-old baby boy she was accused of killing. October 18, 2018. It began as an ordinary Thursday in Wausau, Wisconsin. The air was crisp with the approaching autumn, the leaves perhaps just beginning to turn. For many families, it was a day of routines, getting children ready for school or daycare, preparing for work, the usual morning rush. Among them was a young mother, Melody Murillo. Like countless parents, Melody was balancing the demands of work and motherhood. She had two young sons, brothers, who needed care that day. Her eldest, a toddler full of energy and curiosity, and her youngest, a tiny, vulnerable infant, just 2 months old. His name was Benson Xiong. Little Benson. At 2 months old, he was completely dependent on those around him. His world was small, centered on warmth, comfort, and the loving faces of his family. He was at that precious stage where every coo, every gurgle, every tiny hand grasp is a milestone, a source of immeasurable joy. Melody cherished these moments. But on this particular Thursday, Melody had to work. And so, like so many working mothers, she made arrangements for childcare. She turned to someone she believed was capable and trustworthy, Marissa Tietsort. That morning, Melody prepared Benson and his older brother. She packed their bags, made sure they had everything they needed for the day. She got them ready, dressed them in their little outfits, and then, with the everyday mix of a mother's love and a working parent's slight pang of separation anxiety, she drove them to Marissa Tietsort's home. Imagine that drive. The ordinary streets, the houses passing by, the radio playing softly in the background. Did Benson gurgle in his car seat? Did his older brother chatter excitedly about the day ahead? We can only guess at the small, everyday moments that filled that car ride. Moments that, in retrospect, become unbearably poignant because of what was to follow. Melody arrived at Tietsort's residence. She handed over her two precious sons, placing them in Marissa's care. Perhaps there was a brief exchange at the door, a casual conversation about the day's plans, about feeding schedules, nap times. Perhaps Marissa offered a reassuring smile, the kind that puts a mother's mind at ease, even just for a moment. Melody left for work, trusting that her children were in safe hands. She went about her day, focused on her responsibilities, likely looking forward to picking up her children later, to hearing about their day, to holding them close again. What mother hasn't felt that familiar rhythm of a workday, punctuated by the quiet reassurance that your children are being cared for? Have you ever felt that sense of trust, that reliance on a caregiver? That hope that your children are happy and safe while you are apart? Share your opinion in the comments section. But on this seemingly ordinary Thursday, in this seemingly ordinary home, something was terribly wrong. Beneath the surface of this everyday scene, a nightmare was unfolding. Unnoticed to Melody, as she drove away, trusting in the care of Marissa Tietsort, she had just delivered her precious, innocent 2-month-old son, into the hands of someone who would allegedly inflict unimaginable horror upon him. The ordinary day was about to become anything but. The trust was about to be irrevocably, brutally betrayed. Hours passed. Melody was at work, going through her day, likely still picturing her 2 little boys in Marissa Tietsort's care. Perhaps she stole a glance at her phone, wondering how they were doing, if they were napping, if they were happy. But then, sometime that afternoon, her phone buzzed with a new text message. It was from Marissa. And it was strange. Deeply unsettling. The message read, and I quote, "I'm being charged with second-degree child abuse and reckless endangerment. They're saying I shouldn't be watching kids." But, the text continued, in what must have felt like an even more bizarre twist, "Can you not tell anyone I watched your kids today?" Let's just pause and consider the sheer audacity of that message. Imagine receiving that while you're at work, trusting your children are safe. "I'm being charged with child abuse." Not, "I was charged in the past," but, "I am being charged." Present tense. Right now. And then, the almost casual follow-up, "They're saying I shouldn't be watching kids." As if it were a minor inconvenience, a slight overreaction on someone else's part. And finally, the chilling request, "Can you not tell anyone I watched your kids today?" The secrecy. The blatant disregard for the gravity of the situation. The focus on concealing her actions rather than on the well-being of the children in her care. What must have gone through Melody's mind at that moment? Confusion, certainly. Disbelief, probably. And then, as the reality of the words began to sink in, a dawning sense of dread. A cold knot of fear tightening in her stomach. She had entrusted her precious children to this woman just hours before. And now, this. This jarring, alarming message that screamed of danger, of deception, of something terribly wrong. If you received a text like that from your babysitter, what would your immediate reaction be? What would you feel? Would you dismiss it? Would you panic? Or would you, like any rational parent, be instantly consumed by a terrifying sense of urgency? Share your opinion in the comments section. This text message. It wasn't just a red flag. It was a blaring siren. A flashing warning sign in neon lights. It was a confession, of sorts, hidden within a plea for secrecy. It revealed, in stark, undeniable terms, that Marissa Tietsort was not who she appeared to be. That the trust Melody had placed in her was built on a foundation of lies and concealed danger. This message wasn't just unsettling, it was a deliberate act of deception, designed to keep Melody in the dark, to prevent her from discovering the truth about the woman caring for her children. And it was a chilling prelude to the unspeakable tragedy that was already, perhaps at that very moment, unfolding under Marissa Tietsort's watch. Despite the alarming text message, Melody had to finish her workday. What choice did she have? Leaving work abruptly might raise questions, cause problems. But with every passing minute, the knot of fear in her stomach likely tightened. The image of that text message, those chilling words, must have replayed in her mind again and again. Child abuse charges, shouldn't be watching kids, keep it secret. Imagine the agonizing hours stretching on, each moment feeling like an eternity, punctuated by the gnawing uncertainty and fear for her children's safety. Finally, the workday ended. Melody's drive to Marissa Tietsort's home that afternoon must have been a blur of conflicting emotions. Anxiety warring with a desperate hope that she was overreacting, that everything was fine, that the text message was some kind of terrible misunderstanding. Perhaps she tried to call Marissa again, her heart pounding with each ring. Or maybe, fearful of what she might hear, she drove in tense silence, her mind racing, imagining the worst, while desperately praying for the best. Have you ever had to face a situation where you knew something was wrong, but you had to keep going, keep functioning, while your insides were screaming with alarm? That agonizing wait, that desperate hope against hope, can you imagine what Melody was experiencing on that drive? Share your opinion in the comments section. She arrived back at Tietsort's home. The moment of truth. The encounter, on the surface, might have seemed deceptively normal. Marissa Tietsort appeared at the door, perhaps with a practiced smile, a casual wave. She returned Melody's older son, seemingly unharmed, perhaps even oblivious to the darkness that had allegedly unfolded around him. And then, she gestured to the car seat. In it, nestled amongst blankets, was baby Benson. He was wearing a snowsuit, despite it being October, not yet the depths of winter. And a hat, pulled low over his face, obscuring his features. "He's sleeping," Marissa likely said, her voice calm, matter-of-fact, perhaps even a little too casual. "He's been sleeping for a while now." That's what she wanted Melody to believe. That's the image she meticulously crafted, a peaceful, sleeping baby, ready to be taken home. But it was all a carefully constructed lie. A cruel, calculated deception designed to buy time, to conceal the unspeakable truth. Marissa Tietsort, allegedly knowing full well that little Benson was no longer alive, handed him back to his mother as if nothing was amiss. As if she were returning a sleeping child, not a lifeless body. In that moment, at that doorway, a mother was unknowingly taking her dead baby back home. And the chilling deception was tragically complete. Melody arrived home. She carefully carried Benson inside in his car seat, still believing he was asleep. Perhaps she even smiled faintly, relieved that the day was over, that her children were back with her. She might have placed the car seat down gently, intending to let him sleep a little longer before waking him for feeding or a diaper change. Ordinary routines, ordinary expectations. But as she looked at her baby, something felt wrong. She noticed how still he was. Too still for a sleeping baby. The snowsuit and hat, still obscuring his face, now seemed less like cozy warmth and more like a shroud. A growing unease began to prickle at the edges of her awareness. She reached out, gently touching his cheek cold. His skin was cold. Alarm bells started ringing in her mind, a frantic, deafening clamor of fear. She tried to rouse him, speaking softly, gently shaking the car seat. "Benson. Wake up, baby. Mommy's home." Silence. No response. No little stir, no flutter of eyelids, no soft sigh of a waking infant. Just silence. And coldness. Panic seized her. She frantically unbuckled the car seat, her hands trembling. She pulled back the hat, pulled back the snowsuit, desperate to see his face, to see any sign of life. And then, she saw. His skin. Ashen. Grayish. Unnatural. His jaw, clenched tight. His tiny lips, blue. Not the soft, rosy blue of a sleeping baby. But a stark, chilling blue, the color of lifelessness. In that instant, in that horrifying, gut-wrenching moment, Melody knew. She knew with a certainty that ripped through her soul. Her baby was gone. Utter, primal panic erupted. Screams, perhaps. Tears, definitely. A frantic, desperate scramble for the phone. Dialing 911, fingers fumbling, voice choked with sobs and terror. "My baby. My baby's not breathing. He's cold. He's not moving." The desperate plea for help, the raw, unfiltered agony of a mother's worst nightmare coming true. The frantic dispatch call, the sirens wailing in the distance, racing towards a home now filled with unimaginable grief and horror. Can you imagine that moment? That instant of shattering realization. The world as Melody knew it, instantly, irrevocably, destroyed. What would you do? What could you do, in the face of such unimaginable horror? Let's know in the comments section. The ordinary home, just moments before a place of routine and expectation, was now a scene of utter devastation. A mother's world had imploded. The joyful anticipation of reuniting with her children had turned into the most profound, unbearable loss. In the quiet of her home, the horrifying truth was unmasked. Little Benson was not sleeping. He was gone. And the deadly deception was finally, tragically, revealed. The arrival of emergency services transformed Melody's home into a crime scene. Flashing lights pierced the afternoon gloom. Uniformed officers and paramedics rushed inside, entering a space now saturated with unspeakable grief and the chilling presence of death. The initial responders were confronted with a scene of raw parental anguish and the stark, silent reality of a deceased infant. Their training kicked in, the procedural steps of investigation beginning even amidst the emotional chaos. Police reports detail the initial observations made by the first officers on the scene. They confirmed the paramedics' grim assessment: 2-month-old Benson Xiong was deceased. Their own observations mirrored Melody's horrifying discovery. The baby's skin tone was described as ashen. His tiny jaw was clenched with unnatural tightness. His lips, blue, a stark and unsettling blue that spoke volumes of oxygen deprivation and the cessation of life. Even to seasoned officers, accustomed to witnessing tragedy, the sight of such lifelessness in so young a child must have been profoundly disturbing. The quiet stillness of the small body in the car seat spoke of a peace that was not peaceful, but final. The immediate external observations were chilling enough. But it was the subsequent autopsy that would truly unveil the brutal reality of what had happened to little Benson in the hours before his death. The medical examiner's report painted a picture of horrific violence inflicted upon a defenseless infant. A picture that would send shivers down the spines of even the most hardened investigators. A picture that would leave no doubt that this was not a case of sudden infant death syndrome, not a peaceful passing in sleep. This was something far more sinister. The autopsy revealed that Benson Xiong died from blunt force head injuries. Not a single blow, but multiple impacts. The tiny skull, still so fragile, had been subjected to repeated trauma. The force was so severe that it caused extensive internal damage, leading directly to his death. But the horror didn't end there. The autopsy also revealed another shocking injury: Benson's tailbone was broken. And not just broken, but displaced. An injury in such a tiny infant, requiring significant force to inflict. Multiple head traumas and a broken tailbone. The medical evidence laid bare the brutal reality: this was not accidental. This was not neglect. This was alleged violence, intentionally inflicted upon a 2-month-old baby. Multiple impacts to the head. A broken tailbone. Inflicted upon a 2-month-old infant. What kind of rage, what kind of evil, could drive someone to commit such acts against a defenseless baby? What does it tell us about the darkness that can lurk within the human heart? The autopsy report didn't just reveal the cause of death, it unveiled the extent of Benson's suffering in his final hours. The broken bones, the head trauma, these were not injuries inflicted quickly and painlessly. They spoke of repeated blows, of sustained violence, of a tiny body enduring unimaginable pain and terror in his last moments of life. The full brutality of what allegedly occurred in Marissa Tietsort's care was now chillingly, undeniably clear. And the investigation was just beginning. The autopsy findings were horrific. The police investigation was now fully underway. But what came to light next defied almost all comprehension. It wasn't just the alleged violence inflicted upon baby Benson that shocked investigators and the community. It was what Marissa Tietsort reportedly did afterward. Actions so detached from reality, so devoid of human empathy, that they paint a picture of a mindset almost alien. After allegedly inflicting those fatal injuries on 2-month-old Benson, and before returning his lifeless body to his mother, Marissa Tietsort reportedly made a stop. Not at a hospital. Not at a police station. But at McDonald's. The fast food chain, a symbol of everyday normalcy, of casual routine. Witnesses reportedly saw her there. Marissa Tietsort, allegedly with the body of a dead infant in her car, calmly ordering food. Going through the drive-thru, perhaps exchanging pleasantries with the server, as if everything was perfectly normal. As if she hadn't just allegedly committed an act of unimaginable violence against a baby in her care. What was she thinking? What could possibly possess someone to act with such chilling normalcy in the immediate aftermath of such horror? But the McDonald's stop was just a prelude to an even more disturbing act. Later, still before returning Benson to his mother, Marissa Tietsort allegedly went to a hotel. And not just to a hotel room. But to the hotel swimming pool. The swimming pool. A place of leisure, of carefree fun, of splashing laughter and playful shouts. And there, at the hotel pool, Marissa Tietsort reportedly went swimming. With her boyfriend. And, with her own son. And, according to reports, incredibly, unbelievably, she brought the deceased body of 2-month-old Benson Xiong with her. She allegedly placed his car seat poolside. While she and her family swam and enjoyed themselves in the water, the lifeless body of the baby she was entrusted to care for, sat nearby. Unseen. Unacknowledged. A silent, tragic presence amidst the supposed normalcy of a family outing. Can you even begin to process that? To take a dead baby to McDonald's? To a swimming pool? What does that tell you about Marissa Tietsort's state of mind? Was it denial? Was it a complete detachment from reality? Or was it something even darker, something truly incomprehensible? Denial? Detachment? Or something darker? What could drive a person to such actions? Was it a desperate attempt to maintain a semblance of normalcy, to pretend that nothing horrific had occurred? Was it a chilling lack of empathy, an inability to grasp the enormity of what she had allegedly done? Or was it something even more disturbing, a cold, almost calculated disregard for human life, for the preciousness of an infant's existence? These questions haunt this case. They linger in the air, unanswered, adding another layer of chilling unease to an already horrific tragedy. The actions of Marissa Tietsort after the alleged killing are almost as disturbing, as baffling, as the act itself. They push the boundaries of comprehension. They force us to confront the darkest corners of human behavior. And they leave us grappling with the question, what truly went on inside the mind of Marissa Tietsort? With the brutal truth of Benson Xiong's death revealed by the autopsy, the legal machinery of the justice system began to grind into motion. Marissa Tietsort was arrested and faced the full weight of the law. The charges were severe, reflecting the gravity of the alleged crime, first-degree intentional homicide. The most serious murder charge under Wisconsin law, indicating premeditation or intent to kill. She was also charged with child abuse, adding to the list of accusations against her. The state of Wisconsin was determined to hold her accountable for the death of 2-month-old Benson. Tietsort appeared in court for her initial hearings. The prosecution, armed with the devastating autopsy report and the disturbing details of her actions after the baby's death, argued for a significant bond. Given the severity of the charges, the flight risk, and the potential danger to the community, the judge set a high cash bond of $500,000. A staggering sum, intended to ensure she remained in custody while awaiting trial. Adding to her legal woes, it also emerged that Tietsort was already facing separate child abuse charges from an incident in August of the same year, involving an 11-month-old girl. These prior allegations cast a further shadow over Tietsort and her history as a caregiver. The legal battle ahead for Marissa Tietsort was shaping up to be a long and arduous one. In an apparent attempt to sway public opinion and perhaps influence the court, Marissa Tietsort penned a letter to the judge overseeing her case. In this letter, she made a surprising claim. She stated that she was pregnant with her 6th child. A detail that seemed calculated to evoke sympathy, to portray her as a mother herself, perhaps to soften her image in the eyes of the public and the court. She went further, directly addressing the horrific accusations against her. "I am not a monster," she wrote, in a plea for understanding, for leniency. She denied intentionally harming baby Benson, suggesting perhaps that his death was accidental, or that she was not fully responsible for what had occurred. What do you make of Tietsort's claims? Was this a genuine expression of remorse, a desperate attempt to mitigate the charges against her? Or was it another layer of deception, a calculated manipulation to evade responsibility for her alleged actions? Can a letter, a claim of pregnancy, truly erase the brutal reality revealed by the autopsy and the chilling details of her behavior after Benson's death? What legal strategies might Tietsort's defense team employ? Given the overwhelming evidence of blunt force trauma, a claim of complete innocence seemed unlikely to succeed. Perhaps they would argue for a lesser charge, attempting to convince the jury that while Tietsort was responsible for Benson's death, it was not intentional, not premeditated first-degree homicide. Could they argue for a lesser charge like second-degree murder, or even manslaughter? Or might they attempt to focus on Tietsort's mental state, suggesting diminished capacity or some form of temporary insanity at the time of the alleged crime? The defense would face an uphill battle, confronted with the stark medical evidence and the deeply disturbing circumstances surrounding Benson Xiong's death. But in the American legal system, everyone is entitled to a defense. And Marissa Tietsort would have her day in court. The case of Marissa Tietsort and the death of Benson Xiong is a tragedy that leaves a stain on the heart. A tiny life, barely begun, brutally extinguished. A family shattered beyond repair. A community grappling with disbelief and horror. As the legal proceedings moved forward, and the details of the case became public, one question echoed above all others: why? Why would anyone inflict such violence on a defenseless 2-month-old baby? What drove Marissa Tietsort to allegedly commit such an act? And what could have been done to prevent this unimaginable loss? For Melody Murillo, Benson's mother, the pain is unimaginable. The loss of a child is a wound that may never fully heal. The trust she placed in a caregiver, so cruelly betrayed. The future she envisioned with her son, stolen in an act of alleged violence. The ripple effects of this tragedy extend far beyond Benson's immediate family. His older brother, who was also in Tietsort's care that day, will grow up knowing the horrific circumstances surrounding his baby brother's death. A community in Wausau, Wisconsin, was forced to confront the chilling reality that such darkness could exist in their midst, shattering any sense of security and innocence. And so, the questions linger. What truly motivated Marissa Tietsort? Was it a sudden outburst of rage? A deeper, underlying pathology? Or something even more complex and disturbing that may never be fully understood? Could this tragedy have been prevented? Were there missed warning signs? Were there failures in the systems designed to protect vulnerable children? Could more rigorous background checks, more readily available mental health support, have made a difference? Looking back at this devastating case, what do you believe are the crucial lessons we must learn? What changes, if any, do you think could help prevent similar tragedies from happening again in the future? Share your thought in the comments section. The story of Benson Xiong is a stark and sorrowful reminder of the preciousness of innocent life, and the constant vigilance required to protect it. It is a call to confront the uncomfortable truths about the darkness that can exist within individuals, and the critical importance of building stronger, more compassionate communities that prioritize the safety and well-being of children above all else. Let us remember Benson Xiong. Let us remember Melody Murillo's unimaginable loss. And let us commit ourselves, individually and collectively, to doing everything in our power to ensure that no other child suffers such a horrific fate. For in remembering tragedies like this, and in asking the difficult questions they force us to confront, we may find the path towards a future where innocent lives are better protected, and where trust, once broken, can begin to be rebuilt.